Alrighty, let's go ahead and begin. All right, so welcome again to the Urban League's legislative session victories. Next slide. All right, so this is a place for everyone to be able to introduce themselves. Feel free to drop it in the chat. Thank you very much for joining us for our Urban League short session legislative brief. As we wait for folks to join, please share your name, pronouns, and something you are excited to learn about today in the chat. So to introduce yourself, you would just put your name. My name is Crystalline Black, as an example, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. My role with the Urban League is a policy analyst, and I would like for the other members of the team to introduce themselves as well.
So I can go. My name's Jennifer Parrish Taylor. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the director of advocacy. If you could please mute, thank you. Director of Advocacy and Public Policy here at the Urban League of Portland, and I will pass it to Ronnie to introduce himself.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Ronnie Strode. I'm a policy analyst on Jennifer's team. Pronouns are he, him. And I will popcorn it to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Phillips. I'm a policy analyst as well at the Urban League with Jennifer's team, and I will pass it back to Crystalline.
Alrighty, so this is the Urban League's advocacy team. Feel free to drop your information in the chat as well. All right, so the event goals. So the goals of this event is to learn about the 8 bills we supported that passed and how they impacted our communities. So we will also be learning about the unfinished business of 2022 short legislative session and our next steps. And there is an opportunity for you to get engaged as well. I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Ronnie, who will do our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Crystalline. Today, I would like to acknowledge the people whose land we are gathered on. Present-day Portland is located on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Banza Chinook, Tualatin, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their home along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. Let us also acknowledge the robust Native community made up of tribal diversity that originates from around the country and whose journeys have brought them to Portland by ways of forced displacement. Next slide, please. So I wanted to cover a few group agreements. Let's be mindful of them as we share this space. First, come from a place of curiosity. We're going to learn a lot of new things, so embrace saying I don't know and ask questions. Second, no one knows everything, but together we know a lot, so value everyone's perspective. Third, take space, but also make space. Please be mindful of how much you speak and create space for others. And fourth, take care of yourself. Be attentive to your needs and do what's necessary to feel comfortable. And then now I will pass it back off to Crystal.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. All right, so this gives a little bit of background on what we do. So we are the Urban League's Department of Advocacy and Public Policy. So what is advocacy and public policy? Our commitment and responsibility is to have the broader view of all the issues that impact our community, identify their root causes, and develop solutions informed by the community, which leads to systemic and sustainable change. We do this work through our advocacy and civic engagement programs that equip Black Oregonians with the tools to influence public policy and legislation. We offer powerful trainings to promote social justice and civic leadership, and we hold public forums on important issues in our communities. We canvass and get out the vote. We push Oregon to be a more just and equitable place to live and thrive. All right, so with this next slide, I'll be giving some information on how a bill becomes a law. All right, so bills begin with an idea, whether to change an existing law or create a new law. The bill is then sponsored by a representative who requests that the Legislative Council drafts the bill and is assigned a number. As a friendly reminder, if everyone can mute their microphones, just so we don't get as much feedback. This bill is then read and assigned a committee. The assigned committee then holds a public hearing where constituents may voice their support or concerns regarding a bill. After a hearing, a work session is held to determine if changes are needed. Once voted out of committee, it goes to the House of Origin, which is the Senate floor if the bill started in the Senate or was recommended by a senator, or the House floor if the bill started in the House and was recommended by a representative. To pass, the bill would need the support of the majority of the members. Once the bill passes through one chamber, it must go through the same process on the other chamber. For example, if the bill passes through the House, it will need to pass through the Senate. Therefore, a bill voted on the Senate floor would need to be assigned a committee, voted out of that committee, then voted on the House floor. Depending on which committee, processes can be truncated. An example of this is the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. Once the bill passes through both chambers, the bill goes to the governor for signature. Once signed, the bill goes into effect January 1st of the following year. All right, so many of you have heard about bills dying, but what does that actually mean? There are many points where a bill must meet procedural rules to move through the legislative process. If the bill does not meet these procedural rules by the designated deadline, the bill is considered dead. So each session, the legislature posts a calendar showing these deadlines. The most important ones to note are highlighted in red. February 7th to post a work session, February 14th to send the bill from their respective committees to the House of Origins chamber, February 18th to send the bill to committee and post a work session, and February 24th for bills to be sent to the second chamber's floor. If a bill at any point in time does not make it through this process, it is considered dead. So, what does this mean in practice? As an example, we can look at House Bill 4125. Tenants are often paying multiple screening fees and may not know that they are entitled to the application fee if no screening was conducted. This bill proposed a change to the current law to make deadlines surrounding tenant screening fees clear for the tenant and the landlord. It also required the landlord to notify the tenant of this right. This bill successfully made it from the House to the Senate. For this bill to pass, it would have needed to be assigned to a Senate committee and be assigned a work session by February 18th. So as you can see right here, we have the different actions that have been completed with this bill thus far. Since this bill was assigned to a committee February 24th, this bill died because it did not meet the February 18th deadline. So this can occur for several reasons. This may occur when legislative leadership views this bill as controversial, there isn't sufficient support, or they simply ran out of time. This is why you'll often hear from legislators that the short session is meant to pass unfinished business and not big pieces of policy. All right, there These are a list of bills that we have successfully passed. I will give a brief description of each. Senate Bill 1510, Transforming Justice. This bill made changes to policing to prevent minor traffic stops, such as broken taillights, and looked at reducing unnecessary barriers for conditions of parole. So, an example is to allow remote check ins. It also creates and funds culturally specific organizations and programs. The intent of this bill was to reduce unnecessary law enforcement interactions. Senate Bill 1579, or we otherwise referred to as the Equity Investment Act, this bill combats generational impacts of war on drugs by investing in culturally specific organizations and programs that increase home and land ownership, workforce development, and entrepreneurial growth in communities. Senate Bill 1536, otherwise referred to as the Emergency Heat Relief. This bill provides funding for air conditioners and air filtration systems, which are removing barriers landlord and homeowner associations have in place that prevent tenants from making appropriate accommodations. House Bill 4077, Environmental Justice for All. This bill formalized the current Environmental Justice Task Force, a volunteer task force, by providing it with a dedicated budget and staff so it may better advise the governor and state agencies on environmental issues. House Bill 4005, Child Care for Oregon. This bill provided more subsidies for childcare, provide grants to new childcare providers, provide direct relief payment to certain workers, and properly staff Oregon's Department of Early Learning. House Bill 4045, OHA, Community Violence Prevention. This bill directs Oregon's Health Authority to establish grant programs related to community violence prevention. House Bill 4002, Farm Worker Overtime. This bill included farm workers in overtime protections who were historically excluded due to the 1938 Federal Labor Standards Act. And finally, Senate Bill 1543, Universal Legal Representation. This bill makes permanent and statewide the current temporary program that provides free legal services for individuals facing deportation. All right, so those were amazing bills that we passed. You know, this means that the work that we have done together has put money back towards our communities. It's making it easier for families to stay together and for people to have the things that they need in order to be healthy and safe during the summer, because by providing access to AC units. Here we have a list of bills which unfortunately did not make it through the legislative process by the required deadline. So we will be referring to it as the unfinished business from 2022. While all of these are priorities for the 2023 long legislative session, we wanted to highlight 4 key items. So, legislative salary. The goal of this bill was to increase legislator salary, and it is an equity issue. To date, legislators only make $33,000 a year, which is not enough for a single family household to live on without being independently wealthy. The idea behind this bill is we want to make sure that everyone can have an equal shot at being represented. And that means that we can do that by reducing the barriers so that people of color may be elected so that lower income folks may have a shot or younger candidates. The voting rights restoration for incarcerated individuals. Those who are currently incarcerated should be able to participate civically as a part of their rehabilitation. We will continue to engage on this issue and work in coalition with other community groups. Addressing the public defender shortage. The American Bar Association released a study in January that found Oregon needs around 1,296 more attorneys to fully meet its public defender obligations. Oregon needs about 1,900 public defenders to ensure the constitutional right of those in the criminal justice system. But the state has fewer than 600, a 69% deficit. We were unsuccessful in passing legislation that would address this shortage, but we will continue to do the work to introduce legislation in 2023. In addition to those mentioned above, we would like to fully fund the Equity Investment Act. Though we successfully passed this bill, Senate Bill 1579, we will seek an increase in funding for the Equity Investment Act from $15 million to the original requested amount of $50 million. All right. How can you get involved? We want to take the opportunity to thank our legislative champions and those that voted to pass all of our successful pieces of legislation. It's important to do so that your legislator knows that, one, you're holding them accountable on issues that are important to you, and two, that you support them and are appreciative of their hard work. You can do this by clicking on the link in the chat, which will direct you to a landing page where you can electronically send them a quick thank you. We will also be sending a follow-up email. In that email, you will find a survey. Please complete it. We value your feedback and would love to hear from you. All right, so if you have questions in about today's presentation and/or would like to receive action alerts and emails from the Advocacy and Policy Department, please email ace@ulpdx.org. Again, ace@ulpdx.org. And of course, you can follow us on social media. We will be opening the floor for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat.
While folks are thinking about questions, I can fill in a little about kind of what our next steps are. I know that Crystalline spoke about the unfinished business of 2022 and what we're going to be focusing on in the longer session. Again, my name is Jennifer Parrish Taylor. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy with the Urban League of Portland, and my pronouns are she and her. There's quite a bit of work to get done. I think there were a lot of ambitious bills that were put forth in the short session. It was mentioned that legislators often say that the short session is not for ambitious bills, it's for unfinished business. We feel that all sessions are about the business of community. And so whatever needs to get done should get done. And so our focus will be picking up that unfinished business and looking at potential opportunities to develop new policy, either as the lead sponsors or working in coalition with our community partners who are going to be spending the period leading up to the long session, determining what those agendas are. So if you're a representative of a community-based organization and have a piece of policy that you would like to get help on, or would like to see amplified, or could benefit from just a brain trust, one thing I would recommend is reaching out to Fair Shot for All, which we are a founding steering committee member, and will be a part of the process of reviewing all policies that are submitted to Fair Shot for review, and voting on what issues we want to move forward with. We are also a resource too, if you ever are looking to bounce ideas, looking for support, for sign off from the Urban League of Portland on a piece of policy, I would recommend reaching out to us early. And you can definitely email us at ace@ulpdx.org for that support. Our goal really is to build an advocacy team and department that is a resource not only for our organization, but our other community-based organizations out there that either don't have an advocacy team or could benefit from our expertise. And so that's why we're here. We're here to service the community, work in coalition with our partners, and really just get the work done for our community. So I will pause, and hopefully that gave folks enough time to think of any questions they want to ask. And again, as Crystalline mentioned, I invite you to come off mute, or you can put your question in the chat. That's a great question. What are alternative resources available for community for other legal services? So I just want to make a distinction as to, what is the role of advocacy. We look at addressing policy to get at the root cause of some of these systemic issues that plague our communities. In terms of direct services, you can contact our direct office line or email us with whatever your specific problem is, and we'll be able to refer you to other community groups that focus directly on legal issues, depending on what that issue is. I know we definitely have resources as it relates to housing, and so can refer you to those groups that deal with those issues. But if it's something other that's not specifically related to housing, we can definitely work to connect you with the right organization to help you. So I would recommend emailing ace@ulpdx.org, and we will do our best to ensure that you're connected to a community group that can help if it's not us. Great question. Other questions? I guess the question I would ask while we have a captive audience is, what are some issues that you would like to see the Urban League look into as it relates to policy? Like, what's something that you're seeing in your community that you really feel should be a priority that currently isn't? Excellent question. What other top priorities for the BIPOC community were not addressed and need more advocacy? Honestly, I think we try to approach excellence. That was also just passed the Crown Act. So we try to address our work in an intersectional manner. And so I would say everything that we selected as a priority touches the BIPOC community. So whether it's housing, especially affordable housing, emergency funding for rental assistance and relief, whether it is ensuring that folks have access to and can put in AC units into said rental properties, especially when we're our summers seem to be getting hotter and longer every year. We want to ensure that our communities are well equipped to survive those summers. Unfortunately, we did see some deaths related to the heat, a fair amount of them coming from BIPOC communities, and that's something that we can't abide by and need to prevent moving forward. Things like farm worker overtime. I think folks have a perception that it's just folks coming from Mexico or Latin America who are agricultural workers, and it's not entirely true. We have folks coming from the Caribbean as well who are doing that work, and so it's in the interest of all of us to ensure that workers are protected and are paid for their work and also aren't exposed to extreme weather conditions that puts their health and life at risk. I think the list goes on and on. I think for us, top of mind, really, as was mentioned earlier, is increasing, or I should say rather decreasing the deficit as it relates to public defenders. Because constitutionally, it is stated that everyone has a right to a legal defense. And what do you do if you don't have access to a legal defense, or that the legal defense that you are provided is so overworked, so stretched thin that they can't provide an adequate defense on your charges, or recommends a course of action that may not be in your best interest because they don't have the capacity to really review your case and do the proper investigation needed to ensure, all the facts come to light. So there's a bunch of stuff. We tracked, even though we only spoke about 8 successes today, we tracked close to 20 pieces of legislation altogether and gave both virtual testimony and written testimony in all of them. We will endeavor to surpass that in the long session. So yeah, we're going to be busy during that session and see some other great questions related to SB 1579. Is there a short list that exists of agencies that are ready to distribute the $15 million fund? How do you suggest continued advocacy surrounding equitable distribution of those funds? Great question. So there currently is not a short list. Part of that comes about in the rules process. So it's going to be really important that a lot of the folks, including the Urban League, who are part of that coalition work, who are part of driving that piece of legislation, are part of that rules process, because we need to make it clear that it is important that whoever is driving the distribution of those funds understands the intent of this piece of legislation, but also is able to center the communities, or keep in mind those communities that were being centered as part of this legislation. And so we will be heavily involved in that process and ensure that the communities that should be seeing those funds do see those funds. Let's see. Okay, I'm just reading through the questions. Exactly, couldn't agree more. So I'm excited for the voting rights for incarcerated individuals being something you plan on still addressing in the long session. Would it be possible to fold in more general voter registration and education for individuals upon release? Oregon allows felon voting, but we can make more use of that fact. Not sure if that can be done legislatively. So I think there's 2 parts to the solution. There is, how do we restore the voting rights to currently incarcerated individuals, build in the education as part of the rehabilitation and upon release, and continue that education once folks are released. But I think that education is just not specific to folks who've just been released. I think there's still a large contingent of our community that needs to be educated as it relates to voting. We're fortunate enough to live in a state where we have mail-in voting, so that is that helps to reduce the barrier to participation. But I think there's still a level of education that needs to happen around that. Folks still need to identify a party that they're affiliated with so that they can participate in those races that we see happening. Because unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, the way our political system is set up is that you have to have a party affiliation. And if you don't do that, you can't participate. And so if folks don't know that, even though we've passed things like the motor voter law here in Oregon, where automatically you're registered to vote as soon as you turn 18, or get your license, folks still have to take that added step. And so how do we still have that education around not just voting, but like why it matters, why folks should vote, and how do they get engaged? And so much of the work that we're going to be doing at the Urban League is developing programming that's really going from kind of the federal level of political engagement, civic engagement, to really focusing into local engagement. So we have been heavily engaged as it relates to the Portland City Charter and that review process, and getting folks to sign up and give public testimony as to, you know, their perspective and wants related to the charter. So I would plug that you have until March 31st to submit public testimony on the Portland Charter if you're so inclined. But we're also going to have programming on, you know, getting to know your county, getting to know your county commissioners. I think a lot of folks don't really know who to go to when they have a specific problem. And so our job is to pull the veil away from that, to really make that process as transparent as possible, and to bring folks along and get them excited and get them engaged, to really see how they have agency in this process and that they have influence in this process. And when like minds come together, we can affect change for the larger good. So that's going to be our focus, along with our advocacy work that we're going to do as it relates to policy. And we just look forward to being in dialogue with you all and hearing from you in terms of what your concerns are, where you're excited, how would you like to get involved, et cetera, et cetera. We'll put it on our radar. Thanks for sharing that. Any other questions? I'm mindful of time, so. They've been great so far, so keep them up. Babs has a question. Great.
Whoops. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I had to unmute. Thank you so much. Incredibly useful information as you described what all happened. It does seem that it was an incredibly productive short session. So thank you for your involvement in all that. You mentioned the Charter Commission, and I know you posted this already, but maybe post it again, that the Charter Commission is meeting on Wednesday, the 31st, or wait, what? I'm sorry. Yeah, on March 31st. Okay. Just 2 days away. And you can attend and just listen, or as you noted, public comment is welcomed at these meetings. So anyway, and I will be attending that. The other group that I've been involved with is Moms Demand Action. And so obviously it was a victory. The House Bill 4045 that gave grants for community violence prevention. So yay. The other thing that happened, and I'm sure you know this, is that the short session made decisions about distribution of the American Rescue Plan Act. And all the states were sent quite a bit of money, including Oregon. And this wasn't a bill specifically before the short session, in the short session, but it had to do with budget reconciliation. And there were several meetings about that. And the victory there was that $43 million of those ARPA funds, that's American Rescue Plan Act, were designated for gun violence prevention, and that includes mental health services and education. So that was, I see you nodding, Jennifer, and yes, that was quite a victory. There is a Zoom meeting tonight, actually, at 7 o'clock, Moms Demand Action, and where they will discuss in detail what all was accomplished. For those of you who live in this North Portland area, Representative Tanya Sanchez and Senator Lou Frederick were instrumental in moving that particular budget item forward. So again, thank you very much. I will continue to be involved. I never imagined that I would actually be attending Zoom meetings like I have of the Charter Commission, but it's been extremely helpful and useful. And if any of you out there want to attend, there's just so much information provided, and the commission members are extremely knowledgeable and and compassionate, and very, very open to hear what we as the public have to say. So I guess I didn't have a question, but I am just so thrilled that I've been able to be involved in this process, and will continue to be involved with all of you in whatever capacity I can help moving forward. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you. And we appreciate your participation, Babs. You've definitely shown up for all of our charter stuff, so we appreciate that. We've shared the link to how to give public comment, as well as
Yes.
the workshop that we did related to the Portland Charter in the chat, as well as templates that you can use to give testimony. And I think just want to go to Ezel. Had your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I would like to continue to advocate for the Urban League to participate in more of the Oregon public utility processes. There, I believe, exists a big opportunity with respect to House Bill 2475 to eliminate disconnections for energy burdened customers. There also opportunity for funding through that's called, which would allow for organizations like Urban League to be able to participate in the rulemaking process that's associated with implementation, and also to be kind. And I know that a lot of organizations, I imagine that Urban League of Portland might be one, might have capacity issues relative to the spreading of their resources. And so this might allow for some creative uses of funding that exists at the state level from utilities, and allow for a major impact to be made to a piece of legislation that I believe, if we don't have some folks of color and some folks who have experienced disconnections, who have a frame of reference that is rooted in the experiential knowledge of that problem, I think that we're going to see some implementation steps that exacerbate the issue as opposed to getting to the heart of it. So I wanted to make a shameless plug here for Urban League to participate, and there are definite ways to be compensated, and then also two of our large utilities, Portland General Electric and Pacific Power, have also been tasked with creating a community benefits advisory group or investment advisory group that's supposed to be compensable as well. And I think that I want to make sure that for me, my advocacy work is I want to see people from BIPOC communities, their voice being included in the space, but B, the intellectual property that their voice represents, I would like it to be compensated, and that this bill allows for that, and it's not widely publicized, I don't think. So, shameless plug, I really appreciate this opportunity.
That's what these spaces are for, is to hear from community, because that definitely was not on my radar. We will add it to our radar, and I'll have my staff research how we can get involved for sure. Because, you know, we can't do all the things, even though we try. And there'll definitely be some things that we miss. So thank you for bringing that to the space. And we'll definitely follow up for sure.
I'm gonna post my email in the chat in the event that you want to follow up with me directly. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you much.
And I just wanted to circle back to something that Bab said as it relates to ARPA funds. I want folks to be aware that financially, the state of Oregon is in a very good place. Our last fiscal outlook projected that, you know, we will be fine, and more than just fine. And so I think as you are meeting with legislators, as you're meeting with other local electeds, and you might get some pushback from them saying, oh, you know, we just don't have the funds, or, you know, there's so many demands, we don't know what to fund. I would say push back and challenge them to think creatively, because we know the money is out there. If anything, this pandemic has shown me that money will come when there is a need. And so we just need to frame those needs and organize and be vocal about those needs. Yeah, it'll work itself out. Ezel, did you have another question or comment?
No, I was just really clapping and showing hearts.
I just saw your hand up. Okay, I just want to make sure. Cool. Awesome. Yes. Appreciate it. I think there's someone under the name of A who's a guest who raised their hand. So please feel free to come off mute.
Yes, just to follow up with Ezel, this is Ada. I just wanted to say that I thought that the PCEF committee was targeting some of those issues with the Public Utility Commission. Have you spoken with them on some of their actions that they're following within the community as far as the community involvement with energy initiatives?
Yes, I have seen Nikita Dariani be present for several of the engagement activities. I've also seen, I believe Alma is a part of PCEF, but I have seen some representatives from PCEF. I just don't know if they are from an organization. Do they have the capacity to apply for intervenor funding so that they can follow the process follow the docket as we start to get into rate cases and rulemaking that may be a little bit complex. And so sometimes it takes a little dedicated time. But yes, I have been in contact with some PCEF members. If there's someone else that I should reach out to, feel free to drop their information in the chat, and I'll definitely invite them to processes.
And we've been in conversation with Nikita.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, we've been in conversation with Nikita at CCC, so we do get some of the information, but we should be more involved, which we will be.
Okay. And do you have, Ezel, do you have a contact to follow up with you on that? Do you have a website or an email?
Yes, I posted my email in the chat.
Okay.
And I'll post it. And I'll also post a link to some upcoming trainings that I think would be helpful for people to know about just how the PUC process works, like how the commissions, where the decision points are, and the template for application for intervenor funding, because I think that would be important to note.
Good. I just wanted to add SB 770 to Jennifer. I don't know whether or not the Urban League has been involved with the healthcare initiative bill on trying to find a better healthcare plan for Oregon. and in particular with the COVID, education around the community as far as the vaccine, just knowing what to, what you're learning on social media versus, just staying alive and thriving in the community has been a big issue as we're, coming out of this and not knowing where we're going to be going in the future.
Right.
Will you guys continue with the education of the youth and community on that? And then also the other issue would be the supplies that I've heard that some of the supplies are ending and some of the testing may be ending. And I don't know if you guys have heard here in Multnomah County what those concerns have been in some of the communities that they're still trying to reach, to get them vaccinated or educated on how to stay safe in the community.
Yeah. So as Urban League, we will continue to do our COVID vaccine clinics and do that education, as you mentioned. In terms of supplies, I haven't heard anything, but that doesn't mean anything. But we're often in communication with the county. And so if we are hearing from our community that, we'd like to see the continuation of supplies being offered in terms of testing, et cetera, they're open to having that conversation and continuing to, I would assume, continue to fund programs that provide that testing. I know at the federal level, they did another round of where you can order COVID tests for free through USPS. So I know that that's still going. So we'll continue to do that work. And thanks so much, Crystalline, for putting in the vaccine and booster event that's happening on April 12th. I do want to take a moment just to Ezel's point, like if there are things happening in the community in terms of events, other trainings, advocacy, advisory committee groups, that folks feel that, we should be a part of, that other community members should be a part of, please email us at ace@ulpdx.org. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out to our whole email list that we can share that information to. We also have a weekly just internal newsletter for all of our staff and the networks that we work with to share out that information. So we're able to amplify a lot of what's happening in the community. We just need to know about it if we don't already know. So yeah, I would say please make use of that email and we will do our best to amplify it to our network so folks know. Any other questions before we wrap up? I'll turn over to Crystalline. I don't think you've gone over the social media, so folks can.
I did have one last question for Bev. Bev was speaking earlier. Did she have a link to the meeting that she was referring to?
Oh, Babs with the
Bev.
Babs. It would have been trying
Yes.
to find it. Go ahead, Babs.
Hi, are you meaning the Moms Demand Action meeting or the Charter Commission meeting?
I believe it may have
Hello?
been the demand action. I wasn't really sure which one you were referring to.
Thank you. And I also just wanted to thank you for all that you just shared and how involved you obviously are. The Moms Demand Action meeting is actually tonight at 7:00. Should I post that in the chat?
Yes,
I
please.
can just post the email I got.
It looks like Stephanie put it in the chat. She's on it. She's got it.
Oh, yay. And also thank you to the gentleman that spoke so eloquently. His last name was Watson. I didn't quite get his first name. And I just wanted to shout out to him for all that he's done and all that amazing information that he provided. I did not know all about that. So I am thrilled to know that that's something we will also be following up on. So thank you to him as well. Okay.
Awesome.
Yes,
Great.
so
we'll turn it to Crystalline.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending the event. Please follow us across our social media. Most likely, it's ULPDX everywhere. So for Twitter, at ULPDX, Facebook, at ULPDX, YouTube, just look for the Urban League of Portland and you'll find us there. You can also go online to our website, ulpdx.org, where you will find information on how to get involved, any upcoming events that we may have, and ways that you can sign up for a newsletter and be engaged. Thank you very much for attending. You will receive a thank you email from us because we do appreciate your time. If you can, please click the survey link. We would like to get as much feedback as we can because, of course, our goal is to help bring the issues that you find valuable to the forefront and advocate for you because this is your Urban League too. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.